Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, this is Jesse with the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things nerdy through a common sense lens. And I don't know who coined the term or where it first came around or maybe who it was first applied to of shock jock. But if you look back at the 90s out there and you ask anybody who was around back then, especially anybody that was paying attention to the media or even listening to the radio, who the number one shock jock was out there in the world, it undoubtedly would have been Howard Stern. This was the guy that used to have all kinds of adult film stars on. The guy used to talk about all kinds of crazy things. He used to play insane video games, probably games out there with a lot of these adult film stars out there doing all kinds of crazy things. Had them naked on there, like if you'd seen any of the videos and stuff like that that came from a lot of this stuff. It was absolutely insane, the kind of things that went on the Howard Stern radio show. Well, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, that was a very, very, very long time ago, because since Howard Stern has moved over to SiriusXm radio and gotten off public broadcasting out there, it's one of them situations where literally this guy has gone off the deep end. He's another one of those people that I really do think COVID absolutely broke his brain. He went completely and totally insane. And ladies and gentlemen, just like so many other people that we have seen that used to be some of the edgiest, craziest, most hardcore rock and roll folks that we thought had ever lived out there, well, it turns out when the chips are down, they're just another tool for the spirit of the age, and it looks like that tool for the spirit of the age will be canceled, ladies and gentlemen, because as you can see over here from the headline from thatparkplace.com, Howard Stern show to be canceled? ? Insider alleges Stern no longer worth the investment for SiriusXm. And ladies and gentlemen, would you hear how much this guy is getting paid for annually? I think you'll all understand why Sirius wants to have him canceled and want to end his contract, because there is no way in heaven they can possibly continue to afford him. I mean, that kind of money is just insane, and I think it'll shock you just as much as it shocked me when I found out about it. So we're going to check this article from thatparkplace.com, getting all of the juicy details. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing. We just crossed 2,100. We're sailing our way towards 22. I think we're sitting at like 21, 45, 21, 25. And I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. What do you think about all of this? Does it surprise you at all? Do you believe these rumors are going to end up becoming out true and that Howard Stern is going to get canceled from SiriusXM? Do you think he'll end up having to take a much lower salary? Do you think his own pride and ego will allow him to do that? Do you think there's any way in heaven or on earth that Howard Stern is still worth the amount of money that Sirius is paying him every single year to keep that show on the air? Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. Also, let us know if you're like Howard Stern who as well in the comment section down below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links in the description as well. All right, from thatparkplace.com and our dear sweet Marvin Montanaro, boys and girls. Sources indicate that the Howard Stern show is set to be canceled on SiriusXM as the shock jock's lucrative contract approaches its expiration this fall. The 71-year-old radio icon, wow, I did not realize he was that old at this point, who has been a cornerstone of the satellite radio platform since 2006. Boys and girls, that's literally the year after I graduated high school. May not see his 5-year deal renewed among reports of financial disagreements and shifting priorities at the company. And it's one of them situations out there. I mean, look at the media landscape. Everybody in entertainment across the board is cutting back, with the exception of maybe Netflix. Amazon has done massive cuts out there. They've done massive layoffs. Disney, which includes Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, all of that kind of stuff, has done massive layoffs over the last few years. The media entertainment landscape has been shrinking. And the major contributing factor to that is because the media landscape has become nothing more. And it doesn't matter if it's movies, television shows, radio, broadcast news. It does not matter. The entertainment industry, the entertainment landscape, has been nothing more than a mouthpiece for the spirit of the age for quite a while. And one of those loudest voices who's getting paid the highest is Howard Stern. And as we've seen, a lot of the spirit of the age over the last few years has gone the way of the dodo. It looks like Howard Stern may be joining those ranks as well. But hey, at least they're trying to bring back the dodo. I don't think anybody's going to try to bring back Howard. According to the insight shared with multiple outlets, yes, boys and girls, this comes from the Sun, Barrett Media, and the Sun as well. And if you remember, the Sun is also the one who was reporting on a lot of the Doctor Who stuff out there, and it's looking more and more likely every day that the Sun was absolutely 100% right. But like I said, it's not just the Sun, it's Barrett Media as well. And of course, now that Park Place is picking it up as well. SiriusXM is preparing an offer for Stern, but does not anticipate him accepting it. It's primarily due to the insurmountable gaps in salary negotiations. This is where things get nuts. Stern's current contract, reportedly valued around $100 million annually. $100 million annually. Boys and girls, I don't know. We don't know the exact details of the deal between Joe Rogan and Spotify a few years back. But if any of the rumors and the reports were even remotely true, that is close, if not what Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan might have been getting a little bit more, that is what Spotify was paying Joe Rogan every year. Joe Rogan is the #1 podcast on the planet, boys and girls. And their Howard Stern was getting that kind of money from Sirius. Now, back in 2006, this was probably a great deal for them, right? Howard was constantly getting threatened by the FCC to get kicked off of the radio for all the kind of stuff that he pushed, because he was always trying to push the limits on the rules, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, hell, the FCC probably had his show on speed dial with all the violations he got, right? So it was a great deal for them. Everybody wanted to see where the edgy guy would go. But nowadays, with him being completely and totally possessed by the spirit of the age, constantly spouting stuff that is clearly nothing more than TDS, and of course, completely and totally going insane. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think Howard Stern didn't leave his house for like 2 years after the government lockdowns in 2020. 2 years, boys and girls. Yeah, methinks Howard Stern's gone a little cuckoo since his 2006 days. Like I said, $100 million. Stern's contract, currently reported valued at around $100 million annually, has been a benchmark for high-profile media deals. But insiders claim the investment no longer aligns with the company's economic realities. How can you? I mean, seriously, who still has a subscription to Sirius and XM radio? I mean, even when it came out back in the day, outside of truck drivers and people that like literally drove cross country for a living, I had no idea who was that actually affordable, you know? But for a lot of people out there, it was a big thing. They enjoyed it. I know my stepdad at the time, he enjoyed being able to have like the comedy channels and everything else and just listen to all of that kind of stuff. But outside of people like that and people who literally have money to burn, who still has a Sirius XM subscription in their car? Please, by all means, if you do, let me know in the comment section. And if you really do have that kind of money to burn, please at least become a member at the $1.99 level, because clearly you have extra money that you don't know what to do with. Sirius and Stern are never going to meet on the money he is going to want, an insider source claimed. It's no longer worth the investment. Why would it be? The potential parting ways comes after nearly 2 decades of Stern's tenure at SiriusXM, where he transitioned from terrestrial radio to satellite, helping propel the service to prominence. His move in 2006 was a game changer, drawing millions of subscribers eager for uncensored content and off-the-chain celebrity interviews that defined his brand. However, recent years have seen Stern evolve from his shock jock roots, known for provocative discussions on taboo topics and adult film stars, to a more interview-focused format, featuring in-depth conversations with stars like Lady Gaga, Bruce Springsteen, and Carrie Underwood. Well, unless you're big fans of them, are you really going to go watch any of that? Cost-cutting appears to be a driving force behind the decision that could lead to Howard Stern being canceled. SiriusXM, facing broader industry challenges, has been reevaluating high-ticket talent contracts. One could easily point to parallels to recent changes in late-night television, noting, after you saw what happened with Stephen Colbert, it's likely that they just can't afford to keep him going. The sentiment echoes reports of SiriusXM's reluctance to sustain Stern's salary, with sources emphasizing there's no way they can keep paying his salary. And I mean, with entertainment being down across the board, why would they be able to? You know, I mean, literally, Warner Brothers reset their entire DC universe and to a lot of fans being very upset about it, okay, because they were broke and couldn't afford their established characters and their established talent. Sound like a parallel with Howard Stern, anyone? Adding another layer, Stern's outspoken political views may be influencing the negotiations. A vocal critic of President Donald Trump, Stern has used his platform to mock conservative figures, hosted Vice President Kamala Harris for an interview ahead of the 2024 election. Obviously, that's not political in any way, shape, or form. That's not him obviously putting the thumb on the scale, at least in whatever small way he thinks he can, and move that drew backlash from Republicans. It's more than likely everything to do with political climate, another source suggested, implying that Stern's woke shift could be a factor in the company's hesitance. While the live show may end, discussions are underway for SiriusXm to retain the rights to Stern's extensive archive, allowing the company to monetize his catalog without ongoing production costs. This arrangement can provide a graceful exit for both parties, preserving Stern's legacy on his platform. And if we see that happen, that basically means you'll see a headline come out like, Howard Stern retires from SiriusXM radio. That's how the headline will read. That's how the industry entertainment that whole industry runs things. That's how they word things, right? That's why Kathleen Kennedy will never be fired from Star Wars. She'll retire, right? That's why Jennifer Sulke didn't get fired from Amazon Prime. No, she went on to pursue new creative visions and still has a role to play in small over there at Amazon Prime. Yeah, boys and girls, we know how this will end up going. Howard Stern appears to be the latest high-profile anti-Trump potentially being canceled. This comes amid financial hardships, dwindling audiences, and shifting viewer performances in polarized media landscape. SiriusXM ceased releasing Stern's ratings since 2020. I wonder why. Reportedly due to a significant decline in listenership, with critics attributing the erosion in his increasingly woke persona and overt political commentary. This mirrors broader trends where outspoken anti-Trump celebrities encounter backlash, including audience boycotts and financial repercussions, as seen with figures like Stephen Colbert. And I know, strange concept. Howard Stern's ratings have gone down the toilet because a guy that was known as a shock jock that does edgy and crazy things is now switched over to being nothing more than a mouthpiece for the spirit of the age and to make sure all of his political views are known so that way you'll listen and do what he says. Wow, I wonder why his ratings are in the toilet. It's almost like the same thing happens across the board. It's like when you turn Doctor Who or Marvel or any one of your favorite IPs like Star Trek or anything else out there, and nothing more than a talking voice, a talking head for the spirit of the age to push all of your political agenda. Wow, it's almost like it doesn't work no matter where you try it. In entertainment. I know, strange concept. People don't want their entertainment to try to talk down to them and educate them with their political viewpoints. I know, strange concept, right? Insider's analysis points to that Colbert's one-sided political humor, yada, yada, yada. We've gone all over all the Colbert stuff. Over the years, Stern has shifted from hosting Trump on his show, where the two engaged in crude banter, to become one of harshest critics. It's almost like the exact same thing with all the rest of Hollywood. As soon as he put an R by his name and decided to run for office, now all of a sudden, Donald J. Trump went from Hollywood darling to public enemy number one. Wow. It's almost like Hollywood has a political bias. Weird, I know, right? Here are some key statements. Stern declared that he hates Trump voters, calling them stupid and questioning their intelligence. That was in 2024. He said he didn't mind losing half his listeners if Trump supporters stopped listening to his show. Oh, wow. It's almost like, if you don't like my politics, don't read my comic book. Well, if you don't like our politics, don't watch our movies, don't watch our television shows. Boy, how's that worked out historically over the last few years, or honestly the last decade if we go all the way back to comics? Stern claimed Trump despises his own supporters, suggesting they wouldn't fit in at Mar-a-Lago. That's right, Trump's just as much of an elitist as you are, Stern. Following the 2024 election, Stern expressed fear that America wasn't ready to elect a woman president like Kamala Harris, implying Trump's victory reflected socially biased. That's right. America's just a bunch of misogynists, and that's why they voted for Trump instead of Hillary and Kamala. It could have nothing to do with the fact that they don't agree with those people's politics in any way, shape, or form. No, that's right. All you Trump voters are out there, you're just misogynist, and you don't care about anything else. That includes all you female Trump voters out there, too. Don't forget. In 23, Stern embraced his woke label, affirming he is anti-Trump. Once hailed as the king of all media for his boundary-pushing, uncensored shock jock style that captivated millions in the 80s and the 90s, Stern's career has undergone a dramatic transformation. His early days featured provocative, often crude content that challenged FCC's regulations and built a massive following through syndication in 60 markets, peaking at 20 million listeners. I guarantee you he ain't getting 1 million listeners these days. However, critics argue his pop culture dominance has descended into a more satire and sanitized, Hollywood-aligned persona, and earning him the accusations of being a shill for the mainstream liberal elites through his close friendship with Jimmy Kimmel. Birds of a feather flock together, after all. Remember Jimmy Kimmel? The guy who used to host the Man Show? Yeah, that Jimmy Kimmel. It's almost like they've gone on the exact same trajectories, from being edgy comedians to guys who literally just fall in line and do whatever the access media and the spirit of the age tells them to. It's almost like they were sellouts and not true to their whole thing to begin with, huh? The shift is evident in his move towards celebrity interviews over edgy antics. As seen in fawning sessions with the figures like Joe Biden, which some say stripped him of his remaining edge. Yeah, I mean, literally, if you're going to simp for a senile old dementia patient that's currently holding office, yeah, I don't think a lot of people are really going to call you that much of a shock jock and consider you edgy anymore. Former fans lament the changes on forums, describing it as a boomer decline from crass sensationalism to milquetoast commentary, exasperated by his political outspokenness. The evolution or de-evolution, depending on your outlook, while broadening his appeal to some, has alienated core listeners, contributing to reported ratings drop and financial pressure at SiriusXm. Wow. Alienating your core audience, alienating your core fan base, alienating your core customers. Well, that's not a problem that's happened throughout all of entertainment and Hollywood and has caused billions of dollars of losses throughout the entire industry landscape in any way, shape, or form, now has it? Weird concept. It's almost like blowing off your core audience and telling them to get bent because you think they're a bunch of idiots and you take them for granted because they'll just show up every single time you do something. Doesn't work out. It's almost like your audiences and customers are not only smarter than you, but sure as hell a whole hell of a lot smarter than you give them credit for. So obviously they go on to talk about all of that kind of stuff out there in the broader landscape with all of that kind of stuff and everything else. Talk about a little bit from being fired from NBC to talk about the WQRX stuff, going back through his biography with private parts and everything else from his time on America's Got Talent. Nor Stern nor SiriusXm has commented on the reports. They won't, leaving room for speculation that a last-minute deal could still materialize, only if he's willing to take a giant pay cut. And the real question is, at the end of the day, will Howard Stern's ego and his narcissism allow him to do that? Or does he think does he actually understand that he's not as big as what he used to be, and he really just wants to keep getting a paycheck? I mean, honestly, at $100 million a year, he certainly doesn't need the money. But, well, considering the fact that he's just nothing more than possessed spirit of the age kind of psychopath, he probably still desperately craves the money, even though at this point he probably has more money than he will ever be able to spend in his lifetime, and certainly probably more than even his grandchildren will be able to spend in their lifetimes. But hey, it's his money. Let him do what he wants with it. If the show does end, it would close a chapter on one of the most influential careers in broadcasting, ending for many with a whimper rather than a defiant roar many would have predicted years ago. I mean, that's true. You know, everybody back in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s areas, back when he was at the height of his career, expected anything to cancel and completely and totally destroy, shut down Howard Stern. It would be the FCC. It would be the people that paid his checks to cancel him. And you know what? To a certain degree, they ended up being right. It is the people that pay his checks that are going to cancel him. It's going to be SiriusXM. But it's not because Howard Stern's format from the era where they picked him up and paid for him actually doesn't still sell or doesn't still work. It's because Howard Stern, like Jimmy Kimmel and so many other people possessed by the spirit of the age, they've sold out. They are more willing to be in line with the spirit of the age and the talking points that came out of Hollywood and the political ideology and the agenda, the woke agenda, if you like to call it that, than they would with actually being true to their core audience, their fans, and honestly, at the end of the day, themselves. Howard Stern didn't just portray his audience. He didn't just give up all the edgy humor and fun, crazy antics he liked to do. He betrayed himself. Because if he was true to himself, then he would still be doing those things. He would still be giving the finger to the man. He would still be giving the finger to the establishment. The things that caused so many of his fans to flock to him in love. The rebel without a cause. Well, now, like many of the rock stars from our childhood, from growing up, and even from eras not too long ago, they're not hard. They're not rockers. It was always just a persona. It was always something they just did to sell. They're sellouts. They were never true to their sticklers. They were never true to their morals. They were never true to their values that they all claim to be. Or maybe they were at one point. I don't know. It's God's purview to know the minds and hearts of men, not mine. So one of two things is either true. Howard Stern was never edgy. He was never rock and roll. He was never a rebel. He just did it because it made him money, and it ended up working out really well for it. It made him famous. Or he was true to his form. He really truly did believe in it, and he really truly would have gone down with the ship. But like so many others, he made a bunch of money, he became rich, and he became comfortable. And when you become comfortable, it's no longer edgy. It's no longer cool to push back against the spirit of the age. Why? Because then it's not fun to go to cocktail parties anymore. All those fun Hollywood cocktail parties you get invited to. Because now all of a sudden the spirit of the age has possessed everybody in those cocktail parties. And now if you're edgy or if you disagree with the spirit of the age, like Howard Stern used to, well, now you get lambasted. Now you don't get invited to those cocktail parties anymore. You don't get invited to that in group. You're not part of the in crowd anymore that Howard Stern has clearly let himself become part of. And that's what it is. One of those two things has to be true. He's either sold out or he was never rock and roll to begin with. But either way, at the end of the day, all of those people that have been possessed by the spirit of the age and have fallen in line with those talking points, go woke, go broke exists for a reason. Howard Stern will either get his contract completely and totally canceled, and we will see the end of an era, or he will be drastically reduced, and he won't be making anywhere near as much money as he was before. Either way, boys and girls, it is a win for common sense out there everywhere, and a loss for the spirit of the age. And at the end of the day, that is something we can all be very happy to hear about. So Howard Stern may very well be canceled, and boys and girls, like so many others out there, he danced with the devil. He's done it to himself. He's gotten burned, and it's exactly what you deserve. Go woke, go broke, after all.